Hello, everyone. I guess firstly, a brief introduction. My name is Henry Harrod, and the CEO and co-founder of Fourier Audio. In this talk, I'm going to talk you through a little bit about kind of who we are, who I am, why we're here, and explain a little bit about the journey of Fourier Audio, because it has been a bit of a whirlwind, and then explain a bit more about the transform engine that we announced at AES the other day, and how plugin companies can get the most out of the product moving forward. So, kind of first question is, how on earth did I end up stood here? Like, it's a bit of a kind of mad whirlwind. I used to be a sound engineer, but kind of looking back before that, I was that kid that was kind of obsessed with both music and technology, and then that kid who was always behind a mixing desk, playing, fiddling with analog mixing consoles, and then increasingly, obviously, in digital and thereon. After that, I went into being a mechanical engineer at Imperial College London, and then went on to be a theatre sound engineer in the West End, working on a variety of productions, and had the most amazing time. I really loved my career in theatre sound. But naturally, as we all know, that kind of dreaded pandemic came along and had a word with that particular career that I thought was fairly stable, but crucially gave us a bit of time to take that step back. So I then went on to go and study acoustical engineering in Southampton University at the ISVR, where alongside that, Fourier started forming, and it's been mad ever since. And I guess that after that kind of led to me being, I guess, termed an entrepreneur, whatever that means, however people describe that. And yes, that is me as a baby, and I do still love food. So who are and what is Fourier Audio? Well, as mentioned, in the pandemic, that we had that kind of rare commodity of time. So before the pandemic, as mentioned, I was a theatre sound engineer, and I used to work for a gentleman called Gareth Owen, who was a very successful theatre sound designer, still operating. He works in Broadway, the West End and beyond. And he has won Tony Olivier Awards, etc. And with that, and with the pandemic, he had time, I had time, and also Pete Bridgman, who's in the audience and at the conference as CTO, also had time. Pete at the time was working at a lighting console manufacturer as a software developer, and we had the opportunity to take a step back and consider, what does the future of live audio look like? How do we want live audio to look in the future, and how can we crucially improve it? And so we've, over time, built a team of engineers, and I think also very much a team of dreamers and sound lovers, people that really want to develop the industry further, in a kind of software-led development approach. You know, we see ourselves principally as a software development company, but we also have to develop that onto a hardware platform so people can use it, which I'll come on to in a bit. We're based at 8 Denmark Street in central London, kind of London's Tin Pan Alley. Loads of history there, and it's still there, very much kind of that beating heart of the music hub, and we really love that as our home. And more recently, we joined the DiGiCo and Audiotonics family in May of this year, and I'll kind of start off by talking a little bit about that journey before digging in a bit more into the product. So, as mentioned, it really has been a mad, wild ride. In April 2020, as the pandemic struck, we had those conversations online, on Zoom, almost every day for hours on end. I'm sure we've all had those kind of dream conversations, be that online or in the pub or wherever it might be. And we kind of kept having these conversations, they kept going, and we ended up in this situation where, like, well, actually nothing's happening. You know, we ended up talking in the pub, or in this time talking online. And it really just, we weren't getting anywhere. And so we as founders took a step back and we're like, right, we're going to put a modest amount of money into a bank account and try to convince Pete to give up his job. And he somewhat foolishly agreed. And so he left his job in late 2020 and joined the company in that kind of bootstrap phase while we built a Pathfinder product to test a technical stack that remains with us pretty much to this day. Spool forward to 2021, in September, we closed our first angel fundraising round, which led and kind of fueled that fire into June 2022 while developing this transform engine, when we were successful in a grant application from Innovate UK, the UK government grant body, for about £320,000. And then it's been mad ever since, and we were acquired in May 2023 after some really exciting conversations with Audiotonics and DiGiCo. I won't go too much into fundraising in this conversation, but I'm more than happy to talk about it offline. Please do come and grab me or any of the team if you want to talk about that journey. But I guess one question we do get asked a fair amount is, well, why DiGiCo, why Audiotonics? Like, what was it about them that you got to the point where we're like, yeah, we do want to join this family? And really, when you're starting a startup, obviously there's so many different facets and areas of growth and pain points. And when you reach that point of agreement where everyone's happy, especially bolstered by these points, you can see why DiGiCo and Audiotonics was the right home for us. So just to spin through, hardware design and manufacturing, as mentioned, we're software-led, we're a software-focused team. We don't consider our core competency in hardware, so having that expertise in hardware design and manufacturing is invaluable. Routes to market, coming out to the market with this product, we were going, 100 units would be amazing. But actually having that scale and having the opportunity to go to market around the world from day one, for example, at AES a couple of weeks ago, is invaluable. Proven technology with client base, the reputation of DiGiCo and Audiotonics is second to none, and we're just thrilled to be part of that and inherit that in some way and hopefully uphold it moving forward. Integration, we know we want to be under the hands of sound engineers in their workflow, built into how they work. And what better way than to join a family of a console manufacturer. And finally, when you first meet the team at Audiotonics and DiGiCo, it's clear culturally we were aligned from day one. And so that very much was an easy fit, and it's probably the most important thing as a startup, where culture really is king. And if you, as long as you look after that, in my opinion, you're really onto a winner. Anyway, enough about that. It's been an amazing journey. Please do grab me about the acquisition, the journey. More than happy to talk about it. But moving into probably why we're all here today, which is plugins in the live environment. Now, this might be a situation that you guys are familiar with. Indeed, you might have heard it secondhand or might have direct experience in it. But crucially, at the moment, to run plugins on live productions, there are kind of two key ways of doing it. One is in the kind of walled garden manufacturer-led support systems, where a software manufacturer might release a system that runs their own plugins and then can be used in the live environment. Now, obviously that's great, but crucially means that you can only use their plugins in general, which is obviously very limiting for engineers on the ground. But also then the alternative is to run it on a PC or a laptop, connect it to your audio system in some way, be that by interfaces, dongles, etc. Run it on commodity hardware, be that a Mac or a PC or a laptop, whatever it might be. And then you end up with this kind of Heath Robinson web of chaos that really has become the de facto standard. That was probably considered the state of the art. And we looked at that and we're like, hang on a second, this can't be still the case. And really, that's what led to the transform engine as a concept. And the pain point was that we observed. We dealt with it day in, day out in our jobs, and we wanted to go and fix it. So with that, we introduced the transform engine, which is a 2U rack mount box, which I've got a short video to show you. And so while that's obviously a very short video, hopefully that gives you a flavour of the kind of key hallmark features. But really principally, and probably the most interesting to us in this room, is that we are here to host any VST3 plugin live. And I'll go into a little bit more about how we do that. But crucially, the message to deliver to all of the plugin manufacturers from us is we can already run you. If you can run on Windows 10 and above and run an installed and activated offline as a VST3, it already works with our platform. So crucially, there's nothing for you to do in order to be compatible. And historically, that's been one of the key pain points we've heard from the industry is, why hasn't this been done before? Well, there's so much energy that's required from everybody to do it. And we saw that as one of the key pain points to solve. And so we went about it and did it. So as you saw from the video, and indeed this is on demo down in the exhibition area if you want to come for a more thorough demo, but it's a 2U rack mount unit and everything lives within this unit. So the plugins are installed, activated and running on this server 2U unit. It's built to be tourable, it's built to be reliable, you've got dual PSUs, you've got Dante straight into the unit, primary and secondary. It's really built for touring use. Now, I guess the question is, well, how do you get those plugins? How can we make such a bold claim? And that is with the help from the engineering team at Fourier, with a bit of tongue-in-cheek magic. And that's where we have focused a lot of our energy, is on a baseline system where we're running both Linux and Windows in our platform. That means as far as the plugin is concerned, it's running in a Windows environment. And that's crucial because there's not only do the plugins more often than not require either Windows or Mac, but also a lot of the licensing and activation platforms also add that restriction. So we didn't see it as an option to come out and say it only runs on Linux, because we know that where that's going to go. It's going to lead to a lot of pain for a lot of people. Now, what we also do in this is crucially in the chains and in the individual processing channels, they're sandboxed from each other. So it means that if you do have a plugin that isn't working correctly or does fail for whatever reason, then the rest of your broader system is preserved and continues to operate seamlessly, which in the live environment, if you're on a broadcast and you're across 16 channels, to lose all of your broadcast is one thing, which we don't want, but to have a really quick restart on one chain that's back before you've even known it's failed, that's where we wanted to be, and that's where we are today. So a brief overview of the system. As mentioned, you've got that 2U rack mount unit running both a Linux and a Windows system, and that Windows environment is running the VST3 software. We then, over the network, talk to that unit by both Dante and a control network and control protocol, and then you can interface that with a console of your choice, again, hopefully a DiGiCo, but also a control application or a client application that we will distribute for free that runs on macOS or Windows. And that is the general setup, but crucially, I'll come on to a little bit more of what it looks like to be in the workflow, which is a big part, as mentioned, of what we wanted to achieve. Headline specifications, we've got 64 channels up to 96 kilohertz into and out of the box over Dante, primary and secondary. We've got that cross-platform client, as mentioned, and also inside the box, we're achieving a 64 buffer size at 96 kilohertz, leading to a 0.67 millisecond latency inside our unit, naturally kind of separate to the network latency, but that's our internal latency. And to hit home again, it really is any Windows 10 VST3 plugin that can be installed and activated offline. So the baseline plugin companies do not have to do anything to be compatible with our platform as long as this is achievable within your current platform. So a brief spin through. I haven't got a unit up here with me, but I've got a couple of screenshots, so forgive me, they're not moving. As mentioned, here I've got a kind of screenshot of the client's application. Apologies, it's a little bit small. But you can see here we've got individual chains where we're able to load plugins to within that. So this client's application can be running on any laptop or computer on the network, that crucially no audio is passing through that. And there's no requirement for that client to be connected in order for audio to continue and for processing to continue to work, which is a kind of key thing for people. That's something that really people haven't had before. And what you can do is you can load these plugins in and they will sit there processing audio with or without the client. And you can then, what we call teleport that plugin UI to the client application that's running on Mac or Windows. Now, what you're seeing here, again, it looks like a plugin running on the Mac, right? But crucially, as mentioned, the environment it's in Windows. You can see we're in a Mac here. And what we're doing is at 60 frames a second, we're teleporting that plugin UI over the network to our client application, be that in this client or other clients to come in the future. And then in return, we're taking mouse input injection and other kind of calls and directly injecting that to within that plugin environment so that you can then control the plugin and come and use it. It really does feel like it's local to the machine, which is pretty magical and is almost problematic when selling it because people think it's running locally, but you have to remind them there's no plugin installed in that computer. It's all remote. Now, one other killer feature there is that we have multi-client support. So you can have multiple people on a show sharing that same unit with multiple clients, which is all well and good for multiple clients. That's brilliant, and we know how important that is for people, say, in theatre, but also any other event. But moving one step further, we then also are working initially with DiGiCo to bring those plugin UIs to within a console, into the workflow, under the fingers of engineers. So you can see, apologies for the resolution here, it's off my phone, but you can see it on a DiGiCo, this is running, and we showed this at AES. You can see we've got a plugin, in this case a Waves plugin, showing on a DiGiCo console at 60 frames a second, and you would be none the wiser that the plugin is not running inside the console. Couldn't be further from the truth. The plugin is merely being displayed here on the console and then can be controlled accordingly. So that's brilliant and that's great. But then you go one step further and you go, right, as an engineer, what do I want to do? How do I want to control this plugin? How do I want to interface with it? And of course, we could say, fine, just drag your finger up and down, and indeed we'll support that. That's absolutely fine. So crucially, again, from compatibility, at this point, we've got to this point, and plugin manufacturers have had to do nothing different, nothing at all. Indeed, we haven't even spoken to Waves about this in terms of getting to this point. We have just installed the plugin and it's running here. But going one step further, we then want to look at, well, in DiGiCo land, and indeed a lot of live audio console brands, there's this concept of touch and turn and kind of knobs and dials on the console. And we will really want to deliver touch and turn functionality to plugins. And we're already a really long way down that line. But crucially, we need to make use of a part of the VST3 API, which is called iParameter Finder, which you may well be familiar with. And indeed, a lot of plugin companies have already implemented this for various reasons. But it's not a kind of ubiquitous, obligatory part of the API. But really, once it's activated, and the kind of key notion there is the user clicks in an XY coordinate and then queries us as the host going, what parameter is here? So then we can control that. We are then able to deliver touch and turn functionality on the console, which is even further into that kind of integration workflow that we want to be. So really, part of what I wanted to say today is, as a manufacturer, if you do have the capacity and ability to implement the iParameter Finder part of the API, then you will be able to take control of that touch and turn functionality in DiGiCos when the integration comes in due course. Again, not obligatory, but very much there to take advantage of our platform. So another question that we get asked quite a lot is, fine, okay, I've got my plugins installed, I've rocked up, that's great, but how do I add plugins? How do I've just written a plugin in Juice and I want to add it to my box, I want to run it. So with that, coming back to our client, this is back in the client application. Here are some installed plugins on this box, very nice. But you see we can open the plugin host, and then we give users access to the Windows environment for them to go ahead and install plugins as they would on a normal Windows computer. So you come up to the unit, the server, the transform engine 2U unit, plug in a USB key, and run the executable file to install the plugins. You can then come out of there, and like a door, we then go ahead and scan for those new plugins. And before you know it, you've got them in your workflow. They're installed on that unit, on that server unit. Now, this is well and good, and I think we can all agree it's perfectly functional, but is far from our dream of view of the world. We don't want to end up there, that we don't consider that done and dusted. Really, where we want to end up is at a point where people can just easily go, oh, I want this plugin, it's there, great. But how can we do that in a way that really makes that workflow so easy and for the end user, for people in really high pressured environments? And as I say, that's kind of one of our key focuses here. In a dream world, we would never show that Windows environment to the user. It's not desirable. There's no need to see it. The only reason we need to show it at the moment is so that we really can just allow you to install those plugins in that environment. Now, there are various different ways of doing this, and we'll be open to general conversation about this after this talk and beyond. But certainly approaching this from a command line MSI installation perspective and actually providing that kind of headless installation and command line based installation process would help us in enabling doing that. So indeed, some of you may well have already implemented that, but we'd strongly encourage that sort of approach for now as something that we will look to implement in the future. And then looking a little bit further into the future, we are very interested in future plugin standards. Now, it would be all too easy for us to come in here and go, this is how the future is, this is how it should be, develop this standard. Indeed, we can come up with our own, but that's not what we want to do. We really want to work with the community to understand where are we going as an industry with this? What is the future of the plugin standard? And indeed, the reason we chose VST3 is I think we can agree it's a widely adopted standard, really. Almost everyone adopts it already. So it was an obvious place to start. But where is the future? Is it there? Is it elsewhere? And we would love to have that conversation with you guys and anyone else at the conference and beyond. So our inbox is always open. Our kind of key areas of interest here primarily are in thread allocation, understanding, is this a real-time thread or a non-real-time thread? Is it something that we really need to preserve from a reliability standpoint, guarantee from a timing perspective, or can it take a bit more time? So understanding that sort of thing, and also just maximizing general host feature sets. And we will help shape that, we'll help communicate with you all where we see that, how we want to support you. But again, it's not a requirement. None of this is a requirement for our platform. It is merely just the future and where we want to go with it. So please do have the conversation with us moving forward. If you'll indulge me, just towards the end of this conversation, just wanted to talk about a kind of area of subscription that we're interested in. And this is very much delivering on that promise to users that we want to make it as easy as possible for them to access the best tools for the job. We want to enable engineers to rock up to this box and have an element of certainty of what's in there and knowing that what's in there is the best tool for the job. Now, this is a big ask. It's a big ask on us. It's a big ask on the whole industry to understand what does that look like and how do we curate such a bundle or a suite to pull together the best plugins for the live environment and the job. So curated by us and DiGiCo and beyond, naturally, we are looking to curate a subscription bundle of plugins that provides a kind of speccable, something that's a known quantity to engineers, annually builds Swiss Army knife of plugins to engineers. Now, this is being shaped at the moment. There's active conversations. Indeed, I'm sure a lot of you are already aware of those conversations. But if you haven't yet spoken to us, we would love to hear from you. Anyone developing plugins, if you see an application in the live environment for your plugins, please come and have a word with us. We'd love to speak to you and understand how we might be able to incorporate you in that bundle. Again, far from a requirement. This is not going to be the walled garden that other people have done. This is merely just delivering on that promise to end users of making it even easier to access the best tools for the job. And indeed, naturally, providing a really strong revenue stream to you guys as developers. So I'm wary on the time. I've got about 9 minutes left. And with that, I'd like to invite any questions that you might have on the platform. Naturally, I'll be able to help primarily with the commercial side of things, but more than happy to deflect to any of the engineers as well in the room.
Yeah, thanks for a nice talk and super cool product. The only thing I'm thinking of, when can I get it at home for my eDrum kids? Do you have any thoughts about like smaller sizes, just running one plugin, or for live synth views where you maybe want to have the sound of a prophet, but you don't want to have the unreliable PC that starts Windows Defender or whatever it thinks.
Very familiar pain. Yeah. Absolutely. You probably got a strong hint from the fact that we consider ourselves a software-led team. Naturally detaching ourselves from what is an x86-based platform. So we're all ears to where the market takes us on that. We wanted to come to market with directly targeting a pain point we knew existed and knew how to target. But absolutely, that sort of application, we're all ears to and would love to know more about that pain point, to know how big it is and whether we want to target it. But absolutely, from a baseline level, yes. Certainly the musical instrument element is another interesting one. I forgot to mention there is MIDI on the back of the box. From the get-go, we'll be just supporting processing plugins, but naturally you can see an extension down to the MI market there that we'll be very keenly looking at as well.
Cool, thanks.
Pleasure.
Any other questions? At the moment, I've got one actually, real quick. This might be a tough one, but so we just had a talk before this on accessibility, and you said about the mouse clicks going through, and I presume some of the keyboard events go through. Sure. But have you looked at all at the possibility of being able to get screen reader support back and being able to have something come back the other way, which I realise is a very difficult question?
Yeah, it's the sort of thing where I would deflect to the engineering team, but it's certainly in terms of the depth and how deep we are into the Windows APIs and how far we've gone to get to even this point. Accessibility is a key thing for us. We found this actually last year. I came to the talk on it. I just saw the end of that one just then. It's an area that's very, I think, underdeveloped in this industry, and one that we need to be active and looking into and understanding how we can deliver in various areas of accessibility. So I'll take it away and make sure we look further into that.
Okay, fantastic. Right. If there's no more questions, there's one more there.
Great talk. I was wondering if you guys had ever considered a product that's more analogous to a GPU, so it plugs into your existing host machine, and then you can sort of offload a plugin onto that hardware rather than having basically a separate computer, it kind of seems like, which is streaming back and forth. We're wondering whether maybe that was not feasible, or...
Again, from the software angle, you look at it and you go, really, if you can... I think there comes a point where you go, how much processing can you get into a certain amount of real estate that you have to consider, and how much control of that hardware can we have from our software? But from a fundamental perspective, from a commercial market perspective, you see that as an amazing transition point of going, how do we end up with people wanting to offload their DAW? How do we end up enabling people to use plugins in an ever increasing manner that doesn't impact the load on their PC that they're using? So exactly what that looks like, stay tuned. I think we've got some grand ideas. We know where we want to be with it. But a lot of that will be defined by what we can achieve in the space given and the processing requirements. So to some degree, when we get to the point where we think we can get that amount of processing in a small enough size, then absolutely. But I think we will be led by the market on that and understanding how big is that pain point commercially and how achievable is it to get to the size that's actually going to solve the problem for people. Can we get inside their unit, or do we need a separate unit, and what does that look like? So again, we'll be keeping an active eye on that. We're solving the pain point that we know in that live marketplace, but from a fundamental perspective and a commercial perspective, it's very interesting.
Cool. And I did have a quick
Yeah,
second
no
one.
worries.
Regarding the licensing.
Sure.
Do you have to like plug in an iLock into the Fourier box?
Yeah.
To get that working, or
So
have you figured-
I've got on the back here, you'll see we've got a USB bay. So if you come and have a look at it down in the kind of exhibition area, this USB bay, you just unscrew it, and it's deep enough to fit that iLock in. So the concept there, you can plug it in the front. Let's say you're just rocking up to a festival stage, you can just plug your iLock in. But for most people, they want to set up their show, they want to set it up and put it in there and lock it away. They've got high retention USB keys in the back there, so they're not going to fall out when it's tipped. But crucially, it means that iLock you can just plug it in and use it as an iLock as normal.
Cool. Thanks.
Pleasure.
Thanks for interesting talk.
No worries.
The 64 limit channels, is that like the processing power you have, or is it a Dante licensing thing, or both?
Yeah. I think it's a combination of things there. Taking a step back, we've done our best to take a step back and look at how are people going to use it, how much processing are they going to want on those channels, and where do we think is the Goldilocks point for solving the pain point, but also not giving too much flexibility that means that actually over 128 channels, it's going to be relatively ineffective compared to 64 where we think that Goldilocks point is. Now, moving down the line, we want the expandability to be there. So tongue-in-cheek, I would say you can get further units and you can buy another unit to increase your capability. And we think that's the Goldilocks point of expandability and providing you the tools as a user to expand with ease by adding just simply more units that we'll do in due course. But also for now, having that Goldilocks lump of processing that you know that is kind of that right balance of channel count and processing capability.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much again.
Pleasure. Thank you all.